pra sair no Oslodum. Bloco áspero da terra do bacalhau.
Oi, tudo bem? I'm Professor Jason. Welcome back to my Jumpstart Brazilian Portuguese course. In today's lesson, I'll be teaching you about the forms and uses of the verb fazer. We've got plenty to cover, so let's get started. Vamos começar. Alright, just to give you an idea about what to expect in this lesson, here's an overview of the topics I'll be presenting. I'm going to start off by talking about definitions of fazer and its equivalents in English. Then I'll introduce the forms of the verb in high-frequency tenses, so the simple past, the present, the imperfect, the compound future, the future subjunctive. Then we'll get to what is the heart of the lesson, and that's going over numerous common uses of the verb fazer. And finally, I'll talk about some fixed expressions and some idiomatic expressions that feature fazer. Fazer is an extremely common and flexible verb in Brazilian Portuguese that generally means to do something, to execute or carry out some kind of action or task. So it very often equates to meanings that English speakers would express using the verbs to do or to make. Fazer has multiple related meanings as a simple verb, but it's also used in many verbal phrases and idiomatic expressions that relate to entirely different verbs in English. Another important thing to point out is that even the English verbs to make and to do don't always translate as fazer. They often do, but some English uses of to do and to make are represented by other verbs in Brazilian Portuguese. So if all this sounds pretty complicated, don't worry. By the end of the video, you'll have a better grasp of fazer's meanings and a pretty solid understanding of when you should use it. Alright, moving on. On the next few slides, we're going to be looking at the forms, what some people might call the conjugations of the verb fazer, in various frequent verb tenses, as we've done in the past few videos. So on this slide, we see fazer conjugated in the present indicative verb tense, right? So, eu faço, você faz, ele ou ela faz, nós fazemos, e vocês ou eles, elas fazem, right? So, faço, faz, fazemos, fazem. So, a couple just quick examples of usage. O que vocês fazem nos fins de semana? What do you guys do on the weekends? Or, o José só faz o que ele quer. He only does what he wants. Present forms. Now we're looking together at forms of fazer in the simple past, right? I did, he made, we did, they made, etc., right? Eu fiz, você fez, ou ele fez, ela fez, nós fizemos, vocês fizeram, eles ou elas fizeram. So, fiz, fez, fizemos, fizeram. Examples of usage. Você fez os deveres de casa? Você fez, did you do the homework? Or, eles fizeram o projeto ontem. They did the project yesterday. Okay, moving on to that other past tense, what I call the imperfect in English, right? It's that past tense we use to describe what somebody was doing or some recurring action in the past, what they would always do, all right? So, eu fazia, você, ele ou ela fazia, nós fazíamos, vocês faziam, or eles ou elas faziam, okay? Fazia, fazia, fazíamos, faziam. Examples of usage. Você não fazia exercícios quando morava no Canadá? You didn't work out when you lived in Canada? Or, before we had kids, we used to do more things together. Antes de ter filhos, ou termos filhos, fazíamos mais coisas juntos. Okay, now let's take a look at the forms of the verb fazer in the future, the compound or periphrastic future, which we form by taking the present tense of the verb ir, to go, right? Vou, vai, vamos, vão, and adding the infinitive of fazer to say something like, I'm going to do, they are going to do, etc. Eu vou fazer, você vai fazer, ele ou ela vai fazer, nós vamos fazer, and vocês or eles or elas vão fazer. So for example of usage, a couple of examples. when are you going to make that call? And we'll see this phrase, fazer uma ligação, later in the lesson. Quando você vai fazer essa ligação? When are you going to make it? Eu tinha esquecido, I had forgotten, mas vou fazer amanhã de manhã. I'm going to do it tomorrow morning. Now finally, in our review of the forms of fazer, I want to present the future subjunctive forms because you'll hear them a lot in spoken Brazilian Portuguese, and you should at least be able to recognize that these forms of fazer pertain to fazer. So, in the first person singular, eu, it's fizer, você fizer, ou ele fizer, ela fizer, nós fizermos, and vocês, eles, elas fizerem. So for example, if it is sunny tomorrow, future, if it is sunny tomorrow, we will go to the beach. Se fizer sol amanhã, a gente vai à praia. Or the idea of doing something when something else happens. Eu confirmo quando fizermos a reserva. I will confirm with you when we have made the reservation. Confirmo quando fizermos a reserva. All right, at this point we're going to shift our focus from forms to uses of the verb fazer. We're going to go through a series of very common, important uses of this super frequent verb. So the first one, and perhaps most important, is simply to ask or tell what someone does, or did, or will do, or is doing right now, or wants to do. It's an open-ended question, right? So here are some examples. O que você está fazendo? O que você está fazendo? What are you doing right now? O que você fez ontem? Past tense. What did you do yesterday? O que você fez ontem? O que vocês vão fazer amanhã? What are you guys going to do tomorrow? O que você quer fazer mais tarde? What do you want to do later? Or, o que você gosta de fazer nos fins de semana? What do you like to do on weekends? So again, this is an open-ended question using fazer to simply ask what somebody does or is doing or will do or likes to do or wants to do. Of course, another very common use of fazer is to ask what somebody does for a living. Now, this is a fixed expression, a set expression, set phrase, and this is the phrase, o que você faz? Just that simple question. O que você faz? Just like in English, so what do you do, right? Based on context, it'll be clear that they mean, what do you do for a living? O que você faz? Person might say, I'm a lawyer, and you? Sou advogado, e você? O que faz? The person might say, I'm a nurse. Sou enfermeira. Fazer is also used to talk about doing specific tasks. So this usage covers a variety of fixed verbal expressions in which we combine the verb fazer with nouns to convey the idea of tasks that people carry out. These uses, you'll see clearly, usually have English equivalents formed with to make or to do. So it's just taking the verb fazer, to make or do, combining it with a noun. A cama, the bed. A comida, the food. O almoço, a janta, lunch, dinner. O projeto, os deveres de casa, right, the project, the homework. So it's just doing something. So for example, a empregada faz o almoço todos os dias. She makes lunch every day, the maid. A empregada faz o almoço todos os dias. Or, I didn't make my bed this morning. Eu não fiz a cama antes de sair de casa. Você já fez o trabalho para a aula de química? Did you do the assignment for chemistry class? Você já fez o trabalho para a aula de química? Person might say, ainda não, mas vou fazer amanhã. I'm going to do it tomorrow. So if somebody asks you if you did a specific task, you can say, eu fiz, sim, ou não. Eu não fiz ainda, eu vou fazer. Another sense of the verb fazer, or meaning, has to do with creating something, producing something, building something, right? So you might talk about creating an account, for example, on social media. Increasingly, the verb fazer is used for this usage. Eu fiz uma conta no Instagram. I could also say, eu abri uma conta, ou eu criei uma conta. I created or I opened an account. But many times people will say, eu fiz uma conta. Como você faz uma conta no Facebook? So, creating or, right, producing a movie or some form of literature like a poem or a song, you can also use the verb fazer. Fazer filme, to make, to direct a movie, to produce a movie. Eu queria fazer filme sobre a minha cidade. Eu queria fazer filme. I would like to make a movie about my city. Or fazer uma poesia, ou uma música, a song. José fez uma poesia para sua namorada. He wrote, he composed. So in this sense, fazer means to write, to compose, to produce, to create something. Okay, moving on. Now, if you're a Spanish speaker or a Spanish learner, this next one will be familiar to you because the verb fazer, just like the verb hacer in Spanish, is used to ask or to tell how long or since when. Okay, so to ask how long someone has been doing something, or to ask how long since someone did something, or to simply state how much time has gone by since something happened. Okay, so again, this is very similar to the Spanish use. Faz quanto tempo que você toca violão? How long have you been playing guitar? Faz quanto tempo? Just like in Spanish, hace cuánto tiempo, or cuánto tiempo hace. Faz quanto tempo que você toca violão? Faz apenas 5 meses. It has just been 5 months, meaning I've only been playing guitar for 5 months. So to talk about how long you've been doing something, right? Faz quanto tempo que, and then add the verb phrase. Quanto tempo faz que você saiu do Brasil? How long has it been since you left Brazil? Again, using fazer to talk about time elapsed. Já faz mais do que 10 anos. It's already been more than 10 years. Or it has been a long time. Fixed expression. Faz muito tempo que não vejo a minha família. It has been a long time since I've seen my family. So again, very similar if you're learning Spanish or know Spanish to this use of hacer. Now here's another use that will also be familiar to Spanish speakers or Spanish learners, and that's using the verb fazer to talk about or to express certain weather conditions, right? So just like in Spanish, when you say hace buen tiempo, in Portuguese you say faz bom tempo. And this can be in any tense, right? Faz, fez, vai fazer, fazia, okay? So I'm just going to use the present tense faz. So with certain, the weather expressions listed on this slide, you use faz, or another form of fazer, but always in the third person singular. I meant to say another tense. So, faz bom tempo, the weather is nice. You could say, hoje faz bom tempo hoje. Faz mau tempo, the weather is bad. The weather's bad out there today. Hoje faz mau tempo. Or it's sunny, faz sol, or faz muito sol, it's very sunny. Faz calor, right? Faz muito calor. So again, these can be statements, they can be questions. Faz calor hoje? Is it warm today? Faz muito calor. It's very warm. Or faz frio lá fora? Is it cold out there? Faz muito frio. So these are just weather expressions, fixed set expressions that use the verb fazer, always in the third person singular. The verb fazer is also used when we want to say how old somebody or something has turned in years usually, right? So if somebody says, how old is your son? I could say, he just turned 8. Quantos anos tem seu filho? Ele acabou de fazer 8. He just turned. Acabou de fazer 8. Or the company is going to turn 20 in May. A empresa vai fazer 20 anos em maio. Now, just like in English, if you want to say that somebody makes or somebody made someone else do something, you would use the equivalent verb fazer in Brazilian Portuguese. You'll see this from the examples. So, a polícia fez o criminoso confessar o crime. The police officers or the cops made the criminal confess the crime. Or, minha mãe sempre me faz limpar o banheiro. My mother always makes me clean the bathroom. Ela me faz limpar o banheiro. She makes me clean the bathroom. So very parallel to English usage. This third one is a little bit more complex in the syntax because it uses the past subjunctive in the second verb. O professor fez com que todos repetissem a prova. So the professor made all the students retake the exam. So when somebody makes someone else do something, the first verb is going to be a form of fazer. Here we have what is a very specific use of the verb fazer, and that's when you want to talk about somebody who either carries out or undergoes a medical or dental procedure. Doing that procedure or having that procedure done is fazer. So the doctor carried out or executed or did the surgery or operated last night. O médico fez a cirurgia ontem à noite. Fazer uma cirurgia. Meu irmão vai fazer exame de sangue. Right? My brother is going to get a blood test done. Ele vai fazer exame de sangue. So any kind of medical test, fazer o exame. Ela teve que fazer cesariana. She had to get, we would say, a C-section. Teve que fazer. Or the model wants to have some plastic surgery done, wants to have some work done. A modelo quer fazer uma plástica. Another use of fazer, right, that's fairly similar to an English usage is to ask someone to do you a favor, right? The simplest form, if you want to ask someone to do you a favor, is to use the set phrase, me faz favor, with that sort of intonation. Me faz favor, and then you explain what the favor would be. Me faz favor, you can see the form faz. Or a little bit more polite form, poderia fazer favor para mim? Poderia fazer favor para mim? Could you do me a favor? So those two are basically the same question. And then the third bullet point here is faça o favor de, right? And I have a couple examples, and this is the imperative, right? So it's do me a favor and, or please do something. Faça o favor de kind of has two connotations. One can be a neutral or positive, right? Faça o favor de devolver o livro amanhã. Just means please return the book tomorrow. Faça o favor de devolver o livro amanhã. But this phrase, faça o favor, is often used in a more negative way or kind of a way to reprimand somebody, right? So, faça o favor de parar de me interromper. Faça o favor de parar de me interromper. In other words, do me a favor and stop doing something, right? Faça o favor de parar de me interromper. Do me a favor and stop interrupting me. Okay, continuing on with our common uses of fazer, we're going to shift gears now and talk about expressions, right? So going beyond the simple verb of fazer and linking it up with more words. On this slide and the next slide, we're going to look at kind of what I categorize as some fairly literal verb phrases that feature fazer. Now these are cases in which fazer is combined with other words to form fixed expressions that function basically as a verb referring to specific actions. So in these cases, on this slide and the next, fazer retains its basic literal meaning of executing some kind of task. Let's look at some examples. So to go shopping is fazer compras. Fazer compras. That means to shop or to go shopping. Minha irmã adora fazer compras no shopping. She loves to go shopping at the mall. Or fazer exercícios, right? To exercise or to work out. Literally, to do exercises. Fazer exercícios. Segunda-feira, vou começar a fazer exercícios, right? So like a lot of people, it's always, I'm going to start on Monday. Fazer barulho means to make noise, to make a lot of noise usually. Fazer barulho. As crianças estão fazendo muito barulho. The kids are making lots of noise. Fazer justiça, right, is to make justice, to do justice. In other words, to get justice, to make sure justice is done, or in some cases, to take justice into your own hands, like in the example. A polícia soltou o assaltante. The cops let the robber loose. Mas os vizinhos fizeram justiça. But the neighbors made sure justice was done. Now these last two are kind of silly, but they're actually very common. We have to talk about our bodily functions sometimes. Fazer xixi is to pee, and fazer cocô is to poop. So I'm using pets as my examples. O gato fez xixi no tapete de novo. The cat peed on the rug again. Ele fez xixi no tapete. Or this dog or that dog, right, always goes poop in the yard. Esse cachorro sempre faz cocô no jardim. Continuing on in this vein, on this next slide, or on this slide, most of these expressions, I think with the exception of the last one on the slide, have parallels in English, right? Almost the same expression using to do or to make. Fazer uma pergunta would be to ask a question. Alguém quer fazer uma pergunta? Fazer uma pergunta. Does anybody want to ask a question? Or fazer uma sugestão, to make a suggestion. Eu vou fazer uma sugestão ao dono do restaurante. I'm going to make a suggestion to the restaurant owner. Fazer uma ligação is to make a call. Eu saí para fazer uma ligação. I stepped out to make a call. Fazer uma exceção is to make an exception. O professor fez uma exceção para o aluno. Story of my life. The professor made an exception for the student. And then finally, fazer uma bagunça, or fazer bagunça, is to make a mess. O meu cachorro faz muita bagunça se deixamos ele sozinho. My dog always makes a mess if we leave him alone. All right, on the next couple of slides, I want to share some verb phrases or expressions in which the idea conveyed by the phrase that we're forming with fazer strays just a bit from its basic literal meaning of carrying out a task. So on this slide, we see a couple of different expressions: to make a difference or the difference, and to do everything possible. So fazer a diferença or fazer uma diferença is to make the difference or to make a difference. So obviously very close to the English equivalent. Essa iniciativa poderia fazer uma grande diferença. Poderia fazer uma grande diferença. So that initiative could make a big difference. Então, fazer uma diferença, ou fazer a diferença, or just fazer diferença. Fazer o possível means to do everything possible. Eu vou fazer o possível para te ajudar. I'm going to do everything possible. Vou fazer o possível. Continuing on with our slightly less literal expressions that feature fazer. So on this slide, you're going to see a few more maybe whose meanings don't equate to the verb to do or to make in English. A couple do, but most don't. The first one is fazer o papel de. So to play the role of or to pretend to be. Fazer o papel de. Esse político sempre faz o papel de vítima. He always plays the role of or pretends to be the victim. Fazer as pazes, to make up after a fight, to make amends. Fazer as pazes. Felipe sempre compra flores para fazer as pazes com sua mulher. So when he gets in an argument with his wife, he always buys flowers to make up, to make the peace. Fazer de conta que is to pretend that, very similar to in Spanish, hacer de cuenta, right? Fazer de conta que. Eu vou fazer de conta que não te vi aqui. So if I say, vou fazer de conta que, means I'm going to pretend that. Vou fazer de conta que não te vi aqui. I never saw you here. Fazer besteira is to make, to mess something up, to do something stupid, to screw something up, right? If I want to say, you made me do something stupid, I would say, você me fez fazer uma besteira, right? Or if I have a brother, right, who's always screwing up, right, always messing up, always doing stupid stuff. I don't, but if I did, I would say, o meu irmão sempre faz besteira, ou só faz besteira. And then finally, fazer uma vaquinha, literally to make a small cow, right? Fazer uma vaquinha, but it means to take up a collection or to have people chip in to buy something. Vamos fazer uma vaquinha para comprar o presente. So to buy the present, we're going to take up a collection. Vamos fazer uma vaquinha para comprar o presente. Okay, now finally, very last segment of the lesson, let's take a look on the next two slides, the final two slides, at a few very common idiomatic expressions that involve fazer in some way. The first one is, what are you going to do about it, right? What are you going to do? That resignation, right? What can you do? Fazer o quê, right? You told someone not to do something, but you did it anyways, and you're just sort of resigned to the fact, and you say, I told them not to do that, but they did it anyway. What can you do? What are you going to do? Fazer o quê? Right? Fazer o quê? Very, very, very common. Sort of a reprimand when somebody's doing something that they shouldn't do. Sometimes a child, but not necessarily exclusively. When you're talking to children, to reprimand the person, you would say, hey, isso não se faz. Isso não se faz. Right? Very common when you're talking to kids, but you might also say, that's unethical. Isso não se faz. Faz favor. You have to have that intonation. Faz favor. It means when somebody's saying something ridiculous and you don't buy it, right? You want to put a stop to what they're saying. You say, oh, please, give me a break. Faz favor, right? Don't insult my intelligence, right? Faz favor. Please, give me a break. Faz favor. So you might hear that. Fazer sentido is to make sense. So you can say something makes sense. Isso faz bastante sentido. Or you can ask, does that make sense? Essa explicação faz sentido? Faz sim. Faz sentido. Faz bastante sentido. All right, here are our last two expressions in the lesson. Não fazer ideia and fazer questão de. Não fazer ideia means to have no idea, right? In Spanish, it's no tener idea. Não fazer ideia. Você sabe onde mora a Melissa? Não, não sei. Não faço ideia. I have no idea. Não faço ideia. Fazer questão de means to insist on doing something, right? To really put your foot down, and this is important. Eu faço questão de fazer, right? So I might ask somebody, você faz questão de ir comigo? Right? Is it really important for you to come with me? Do you insist on doing it? Você faz questão de ir comigo? Não, eu te espero aqui em casa. Or, this is a true story, my father-in-law always insists on paying the bill if we go to a restaurant, even if I try to stop him. So I might say, meu sogro sempre faz questão de pagar a conta. He always insists on doing it. It's important to him. Ele faz questão de pagar a conta. All right, that's it for today's lesson. Hope you found it to be informative and useful. If so, would you please like, comment, and share with others? Don't forget to add and follow me on social media for updates, and be sure to come back to the Professor Jason channel again soon. See you next time. Até breve. Ciao.
Eu vou pra Oslo, pra sair no Oslo